There's a particular kind of fatigue that settles in just before everything shifts, not the ordinary tiredness that comes from working late or the exhaustion that follows weeks of pushing past your limits. No, this is something else entirely. It's the kind of heaviness that shows up when you're standing at the edge of something monumental, yet you can't quite see the shape of it. You felt it, haven't you? That restless hum in your body that refuses to let you fall back into the safety of your old patterns. That persistent tug that whispers something underneath your life is already rearranging. It's like the slow, silent shifting of tectonic plates before the earthquake hits. You can't define it, but the air itself feels charged, both with possibility and with uncertainty. And no, this isn't your imagination weaving stories out of thin air. It isn't desperate hope trying to dress itself up as intuition. What you're experiencing is the very vibration of breakthrough. And if you're sitting here right now listening to this, it's a sign that you're standing closer to it than you realize. Most people never walk this far. They spend their whole lives lingering in that in-between space, close enough to crave something different, but never bold enough to step into it. They fantasize about change, but freeze when life begins to bend and twist itself to make room for what they once prayed for. They say they want transformation, but panic the second comfort begins to collapse. But you are not most people. Without even noticing, you've been laying down the foundation inside yourself. Every single time you chose growth over what was easy, every single time you didn't walk away when the conversation cut too deep, every single time you stood in front of your own reflection and decided to face the person looking back at you with honesty instead of avoidance. That was training. That was rehearsal for what's about to unfold. The truth about breakthroughs, they rarely announce themselves with flashing lights or loud introductions. They don't arrive with a warning sign or a countdown clock. They slip in quietly, disguised as everyday moments that somehow feel charged with more weight than they should. They unfold in that thin space between who you've been and who you're becoming. And they demand release. Release of the very things you once swore you couldn't live without. And now here you are, right in that fragile in-between space, where the person you were no longer fits, but the person you're becoming hasn't fully stepped forward. It's an uncomfortable place. One of the hardest places a human being can stand because you are neither anchored nor free. You're in the tension of transition, which is both the most vulnerable and the most powerful ground you'll ever stand on. Think back over the past few weeks, or even months. Haven't you noticed the difference? Relationships that once carried you now feel strained. Conversations that used to spark energy now feel hollow. Ambitions that used to ignite passion now leave you strangely detached. This isn't collapse, it's clearing. Life isn't falling apart, it's opening space for what's about to emerge. Your breakthrough isn't going to look the way you pictured it. It won't resemble a cinematic climax where everything clicks into place in one perfect moment. It's not about a single epiphany that erases every obstacle in a blaze of clarity. No, real breakthrough is far messier. It feels like an explosion in slow motion, dismantling everything you thought you knew about yourself and the world you move through. What's happening right now is your capacity stretching. Not your capacity for more achievement, recognition, or external trophies, your capacity for truth, for wholeness, for inhabiting the full weight of who you are without apology or shrinking. And this kind of expansion never feels like peace at first. It feels like breaking. You've probably noticed how differently you've been speaking lately, how you've begun saying the words you once swallowed, how you're setting boundaries that feel foreign but essential, how you're walking away from cycles that used to hold you hostage in endless repetition. You're becoming someone who answers differently, who chooses differently, who carries themselves with a new kind of presence. This is what breakthrough looks like while it's happening. Not a destination, not a finish line, but a new way of existing that you're slowly growing into. And this growth always begins in the shadows, in the discomfort, in the darkness of not knowing, while you keep moving anyway because staying still has finally become more painful than moving forward. And here's the secret no one tells you about being this close to breakthrough. The people around you will notice before you do. They'll comment on your energy, on how something about you feels different. Some will cheer for you. Others will resist because your transformation forces them to see their own refusal to grow. Your change threatens the fragile comfort of their sameness. But their reactions aren't yours to manage anymore. You've stepped into the space where your loyalty belongs to your own becoming, not to protecting others from the discomfort of your evolution. At first, this shift might trick you into thinking you've grown selfish or detached or caring. But what's really happening is you're learning to love from wholeness instead of emptiness. You're realizing you can care without carrying, support without losing yourself, connect without collapsing into dependency. Before now, those boundaries blurred because you didn't have the inner strength to hold them. But now, the energy you once wasted trying to regulate everyone else's comfort is free to be directed toward actually living. And when your focus stops scattering and starts concentrating, acceleration begins. Opportunities appear where you once saw only walls. Connections spark that would have seemed impossible before. Not because you've suddenly become worthy, but because you've finally made yourself available. Breakthrough isn't about becoming a different person. It's about remembering the person you were before the world taught you to shrink, before you learned to dim your fire, mute your voice, or compress your dreams just to fit into places that could never hold your fullness. Everything that's coming will draw on the strength you've cultivated, the wisdom you've gathered, and the courage you've chosen again and again when it felt impossible. Because breakthrough doesn't just rearrange your circumstances, it alters the very lens you see reality through. Suddenly, you begin noticing patterns everywhere. Not in the way seekers chase mystical signs or conspiracy theorists chase shadows, but in the grounded way that life itself starts to weave meaning in front of you. The right person calling at the exact moment. The right book falling into your hands with the words you've been needing. They create perfect timing by finally deciding to trust what they've always known was true. If this resonated with you, if something inside recognized itself in these words, then you know exactly what your next step is. The question isn't whether you're ready anymore. The question is what you're going to do about it. The way conversations suddenly unfold in ways that open doors you didn't even know were there. The way connections happen that seem impossibly precise, yet perfectly timed. This isn't wishful fantasy. It's what naturally happens when you start vibrating at the frequency of breakthrough. Your awareness expands beyond what your former self could register. You begin to notice signals that were always present but hidden from the version of you that wasn't yet ready to interpret them. You start speaking a language life has been whispering all along, but only now are you fluent enough to understand it. And the strangest part is how ordinary it all feels. You're not walking around in some mystical trance, seeing visions or hearing voices. You're simply moving through your days, but with a clarity so sharp it cuts through all the static like silk tearing. Choices that used to paralyze you suddenly appear obvious. Circumstances that used to drain you begin to resolve themselves with little to no resistance. Problems that once spiraled endlessly in your mind reveal solutions so simple it almost feels absurd you didn't see them before. What's happening is that your entire system is being rewired. Your nervous system, your patterns, your default responses, they're recalibrating. Where you once shrank with anxiety, you now lean forward with curiosity. Where you once contracted in fear, you now stretch into possibility. Where you once clung to control, you now soften into trust. Not because you've eradicated fear, but because you've learned to relate to it differently. Fear is still present, but it no longer commands your decisions. It's transformed from dictator to messenger, from instruction to information. Now, when fear arises, you don't bolt or suppress it. You pause. You listen, you ask what it's pointing toward, and then you move from a deeper place of choice. That is mastery. And mastery always looks effortless to those watching from the outside, even though you know it cost you every ounce of effort and courage to cultivate. Soon, people will start asking what shifted. They'll want to know what book you read, what program you joined, what secret strategy you discovered. And you'll find yourself unable to explain it in neat packaged steps because breakthrough is not a formula. It's not a checklist you can hand to someone else. It's not something you do. It's the inevitable outcome of 1,000 invisible decisions to show up real when it would have been easier to hide. This is why your breakthrough is making you dangerous. Not in a destructive way, but in the most liberating sense of the word. Dangerous to systems that depend on your silence. Dangerous to relationships that survive only through your self-abandonment. Dangerous to industries that profit from your doubt. You're becoming someone who cannot be manipulated by guilt or controlled by fear. Someone who no longer trades authenticity for belonging or truth for approval. And this danger isn't loud or confrontational. It's quiet, steady, unshakable. The danger of someone who knows their worth so deeply they no longer feel the need to defend it. The power of someone who moves in alignment, who makes decisions without explanation, who speaks truth without apology. The old version of you would have drowned in guilt at this shift. The old version of you would have twisted yourself into knots trying to make sure no one was unsettled by your evolution. But the person you are now understands that your role isn't to make transformation comfortable for others. Your role is to honor what's unfolding through you, no matter how disruptive it appears. And what's unfolding is not small. It's not about climbing some external ladder of success or collecting recognition. It's about the magnitude of impact your authenticity carries, the ripples it creates without effort, the permission it gives to others just by existing as truth in a world addicted to pretense. You're not trying to convince anyone. You're not trying to fix anyone. And yet your presence itself becomes catalytic. Your willingness to stand in your own truth becomes the mirror that exposes the illusions in theirs. Your ease with uncertainty becomes the handhold others cling to when they begin loosening their grip on control. Your courage to be disliked for being real becomes the spark that allows them to drop their own masks. And this is why breakthrough often feels isolating, because it's not only your life that shifts, it destabilizes entire networks of relationships, agreements, and expectations that were built around the smaller version of you. Some people will rise with you. Others will cling to the person you used to be and drift away when that version no longer shows up. Both outcomes are exactly what's required, because in order for the new to take form, space has to be cleared. And make no mistake, the timing of your breakthrough is precise. It's not random, not accidental. It's arriving now because you finally developed the inner architecture to carry it, the maturity, the steadiness, the capacity. You had to earn this moment through trial and error, through heartbreak and disappointment, through falling down and standing back up when surrendering would have been simpler. And as this breakthrough takes root, you'll realize just how much power you've been leaking without knowing it. Power you handed away to other people's judgments, power you surrendered to circumstances you couldn't control, power you buried beneath imaginary fears. As you reclaim this energy, you'll uncover reservoirs of strength you didn't even know you had. But reclamation isn't always graceful. Sometimes it feels like walking through a house you've lived in for years and suddenly noticing all the dust in the corners. Sometimes it feels like grieving the hours, the days, the years that slipped through your hands because you stayed small. Sometimes it feels like standing face to face with the weight of everything you avoided. But on the far side of that grief lives something entirely new. A version of you that doesn't just endure pain, but transforms it into wisdom. That doesn't just survive obstacles, but turns them into stepping stones. That doesn't just live, but breathes life into every space you enter. So if these words are resonating more deeply than they would have months ago, it's because you already know, deep down, that this isn't just another passing message. It's confirmation. Confirmation that the shift you've been sensing isn't somewhere far in the future. It's happening now. Your breakthrough isn't waiting on some distant horizon. It's here. It's always been here, waiting for you to stop searching everywhere else and recognize that it was never apart from you. That exhaustion you've been carrying, that restlessness you can't explain, that electric feeling that something is about to give, that is the breakthrough itself. The tension of outgrowing who you were, the unease of not yet knowing who you're becoming, the strange mix of fear and exhilaration that keeps you awake at night. All of that is the process in motion. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need every step mapped out. You don't need to persuade anyone that you're ready. The future version of you, the one knocking at the edges of your awareness, isn't going to wait forever. Not because time is running out, but because life itself is moving, with or without you. And your moment, the moment you've been preparing for, isn't later. It's not when conditions line up or when you feel completely secure. It's now. Always now. Because those who step into breakthrough are the ones who finally stop waiting for perfect timing and choose to move anyway.